Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/slash Tales from Tech Support. In today's episode, that time the network was broken, I fixed it twice, then broke it some more. It was 1,000,000 to 1 shot, document 1,000,000 to 1. The changed Windows appearance. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. That time the network was broken, I fixed it twice, then broke it some more. This story is quite lengthy and is mainly networking focused. Anybody who has read my previous TFTS posts knows, although I work second line support, I also did dev work, as well as this, being the only hardware tech in the office, and our infrastructure being based 300 miles away meant I was also the most qualified to set up PCs and manage the local network. We operate in a managed office, so we share a building with other businesses, although we run our own network. We have our own network here which is connected to our HQ in London, however the building handles our phone lines. All our PCs and desks run to the local comms room, where they are patched into 2x28 port switches. Our phone lines require one direct connection to the switch, while the PCs can daisy chain or hook into a smaller switch which we keep under the desks. We have some local kit like file server, DNS and firewall, but we ultimately tunnel our connection, while the rest of the building operates on a different setup altogether. Most importantly, however, we all operate on the same physical lines. I know a few of you are already starting to itch at how bad this all sounds. Trust me, I've tried to get our infra to improve this, however since I am not part of the team my advice is often ignored. This story is probably a strong example of why they thought this. Having rewrote the tale from my youth, I realize I took a lot of unnecessary risks, came to a lot of incorrect conclusions, and while ultimately the blame didn't rest with me, I made a lot of actions which made things both better and worse. I guess the main point of my tale is that everybody who did no better than me was eager to place the blame at my feet and tell me they weren't getting involved even when that was exactly their job, but I digress. Here is the tale of the time I broke the building's network. Friday. So one fine Friday afternoon we are setting up for some new employees starting on Monday. Our new desks arrive and the entire office joins forces to shut down, shift the new desks, and set up the new computers. I have some tasks to set up some new hubs under the desks and hook in the new phone lines. I take the opportunity to catalog which floor ports are in use, so that I can try and clear some space on the switch, with over 30 employees requiring phones and desktops, as well as printers and other devices. We were starting to run short on space. After each desk is moved, I mark each floor port in use, whether it's a phone or a desktop. Then in the server room I change the cable to the switch, blue for phone and gray for data. Afterwards I marvel at the cleanliness of it. Each connection is clearly cataloged, so we can trace from PC to floor port to switch port and vice versa. Everybody is online, everybody logs into their phones. The office is ready for new staff. Everybody pats themselves on the back and heads home for the weekend. Monday. I come into work to more or less complete chaos. Nobody has access to the internet. Those who do have access to the internet can't access our servers. I log into my PC and do some diagnosis. My machine connects to the internet and I ping our servers with no response. I try to ping the server by direct IP and this works for some reason. I check my IP and notice I'm not on our network, but one belonging to the building. I go to a few of those who can't connect to the internet and check their DNS settings. The DNS is unreachable, and I try changing it over to a Google DNS which works. Okay, so maybe our DNS is down. I go to see the building manager and ask if there were any power issues over the weekend. He tells me that there was a power cut in the area on Sunday night, but that we were supposedly unaffected. With my limited knowledge of networking, I start to form a theory in my head. There was a small power cut, or a surge. Our DHCP has gone offline and come back up, but has been reset, so it's not allocating IP. Some of us are therefore finding a route to the next DHCP it can find, which is the building's. I go back to my desk and try to access our DHCP server. I'm asked for a password and decide to try some basics like changeme or admin. Remarkably, one of those work, and I met with the client listing. I can see a number of devices from our office. The ones which can connect the IP range, subnet and gateway are all wrong. I call up our infra team and let them know our findings, as well as make sure I'm on the right thinking. They agree that resetting the DHCP back to its settings is probably good, agreeing that a power surge or power cut probably reset it. I set the DHCP settings, connection comes back for everybody in the office, servers visible. Everybody pats me on the back and we all get back to work. Tuesday. I arrive at the office and am greeted by the building manager at his desk on the phone. As I walk through the door and smile at him, I hear him say 2 moments he's just walked through the door. Well, that can't be good. He tells me that nobody in the building can see their servers and are having intermittent connections, and that when he rang up our office to tell us about the outage, they had told him that not only was their network fine, it was thanks to me messing around with the network yesterday. He calls me over to his desk and asks me to speak to the building's network engineers, who are a remote company and reluctant to send out an engineer to come take a look. I explain the situation, that our office's connection went down and we believe it was due to a power cut. The remote engineer agrees that I may be on the right lines, but changing settings on our own equipment shouldn't impact the rest of the building, although they might have had similar issues with power, and he would check the rest of the equipment remotely to ensure it was configured. I go to our office and everybody is sat working happily. Our network is running smoothly. I let everybody know what's going on in the building, then get on with my job. At around lunch, the building manager comes to the office and asks me to look at his PC. We go down and he's trying to remote to a server. The server is unreachable. I run a quick IP protocol configuration and notice something awful. He has one of our IPs. Then it clicks into place. I hadn't modified our DHCP to have the correct settings. I had changed the entire building's DHCP server to force everybody onto our network. I imagine my face probably turned a lovely shade of green. I quickly, and I meant really F***king quickly, reverted the settings on the DHCP server I was on yesterday. People in the rest of the building started to reconnect to their services, which some of our office's machines started disconnecting at random. This was bizarre. We weren't automatically being put onto our network, and were in fact connecting directly to the building's wider network. But our network was still there, and we could ping our servers, but only when we forced our clients to use our direct IP details. Furthermore, the rest of the building could suddenly do the same, and we were on the verge, probably far over the verge, of a data breach. Thankfully, there was a team of engineers on site who ran their own networking business, but didn't do networking for the buildings. $BM asked if they'd take a look, and they'd asked me to come along. After a lengthy wander around the whole building, they asked me if we'd recently changed our floor ports. I told them about the work I'd done on cleaning up on unused space. They told me the building uses a spanning tree protocol, and that there can't be any loops in the network. I was tasked with once again ripping up our floor ports, remapping the whole lot, and ensuring that nothing plugged in was plugged in anywhere else. I went through all of our floor ports, all of our switch ports, till I was happy there were no loops. It was 9 p.m. and I checked my desktop. The network was offline completely. There was nothing more I could do that day. I was exhausted and figured I'd go to sleep early, be in before everybody else the next day, and figure it out. Wednesday, final day of outage. I come in at 7 a.m., that was early for me, as we established the day before. The building's network was fine, ours was not. I try a few solutions I thought of over the last few hours, but to no avail. My colleagues started to filter in at 8:30, some being understanding of the outage and others asking me when I'd fix it. Tired of pointing out I didn't actually cause the outage, I just started trying to get in touch with anybody who knew more about the network than I did. Our infrastructure denied all knowledge of anything being wrong, at one point asserting they never even set up the physical network and only handled configuration. Our building manager put me in touch with the remote network engineers who were singing the same tune, that we set up the physical network, and they just handled configuration. Completely lost for solutions, I started trying to set up contingency. We had some small Wi-Fi hotspots. Since they couldn't hold more than a few clients, I decided we would connect one PC to the hotspot and bridge the rest of the connection through the hubs. It wasn't pretty, but it'd get us online, and we could use our VPN as if we were working from home. I disconnected each hub from the floor ports as I didn't want the building network to interfere, and set up the first bank of desks. The plan worked. Everybody connected to the internet and started to connect to the VPN. I got to the second bank of desks and disconnected the hub from the floor port. No sooner had that been done than people started to shout about the networking being back. In my head, I started to curse. That wasn't a coincidence. I asked somebody to connect to a random website to ensure it wasn't cached data. Not just people on this bank, the entire office was back online. I plugged the cable I had just unplugged back in. The network fell once more. I remembered the local network guy from yesterday saying to me, make sure there are no loops. I checked the floor port, 3 phone lines and 1 data connection. The data connection went to the hub, and 7 more cables came out. Wait. 7? There are 6 computers and 1 connection to the switch, so why are there 8 cables plugged in? I asked each person to tell me when Windows said their network cable was unplugged. Each one called out until 1 cable did nothing. I followed it. It went around the entire bank of desks, back around a desk leg, into another separate floor port. What's more is that the floor port it was plugged into mapped to the other switch in our cabinet, making a perfect little loop in our spanning tree. The fault wasn't with anybody really. When everybody pitched in moving the desks on Friday, somebody had spotted a spare data cable and thought they were being helpful plugging it back into the floor. So there you have it, a 3-day outage brought to an end by unplugging a single 5-meter Cat5e cable. A cable that managed to bring down an entire building's network. I reported my findings to everybody concerned. Our local infra blamed the building's topology. The building engineers blamed our local infra. The engineers who helped out were happy it was resolved, and everybody in our office continued to blame me for touching it in the first place. I was quite happy to put on some music and start dealing with some regular user issues. It was 1,000,000 to 1 shot, document 1,000,000 to 1. I was just about to take a sip of coffee when my boss busted into my office. "IDAC, this is bad. Really bad. You know that label printer we keep in the back? You mean the one that we print literally thousands of labels on every week? The one that occasionally clogs the rewinder and spews labels all over the room unless someone's babysitting it during the entire print? That's the one. We've got a big problem now. You know how every single client uses white labels, right? Yeah, and well, we just received the rolls of 100,000 blackback labels one client requested. Okay. And they're too dark for the sensor to tell whether there's a label or a gap. It thinks nothing's loaded every time. Can't we set it to continuous mode and skip the sensor altogether? This thing's older than my grandmother. It doesn't have that setting. Can we skip the calibration step? Tried that too, but the whole thing goes off the rails after about 20 labels. So I started to walk into the printer room. I won't lie to you boys, I was terrified. But I pressed on, and as I made my way past my coworkers, a strange calm came over me. I looked at the display on the printer while it was printing a roll of white labels. Printing 1 of 1, it said, happily spitting out label 500 or so. And then it hit me. Once the printer detected labels, the software took over and sent everything to the printer as a single unit, after which it did whatever it was told. I don't know if it was divine intervention or the kinship of all cranky things, but I tell you, at that moment I was a printer technician. I grabbed a pair of scissors and a roll of tape and snipped a few white labels off a roll. 3 to be exact, the number needed for the calibration step. I taped those labels to the end of a roll of black labels and loaded it into the printer. The air was heavy with anticipation as one by one, the white labels spooled through the printer. And just before the black labels hit the sensor, the display read, "Ready." By rights it shouldn't have worked. But just this one time, it did. The changed Windows appearance. This is a fairly short story, but I found the incident amusing. I am currently in training in IT and therefore often get assigned quite different tasks. So I got this ticket forwarded, where someone from the first level support has bitten his teeth. Maybe the trainee finds the error. According to the user description, the issue was there after a Windows update. Apparently, the view of the GUI elements of Windows has changed. When I had now connected via support software, indeed, the view was something very strange. Font was green, the taskbar was divided into black boxes with white borders. Especially the green font of the search bar label caught my eye. I had seen this somewhere before. Perhaps you can already think where this leads. Anyway, the user had managed to activate the high contrast display option of Windows without knowing it. You can activate it from the lock screen by clicking on the corresponding ease of access icon. Thus, after disabling and restarting the PC, the view was back to normal and the user was happy. Ticket closed in time for the weekend. It was a Friday.